so that I could not have glare on my screens since the blinds that they gave us don't
I
do their job.
I would think so because somebody else I think has curtains.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Okay. I'll just see if I can get some because it's ridiculous. Because I have to sit at an angle so that that
yeah.
doesn't up. Alrighty, here we go. Oops. A minute. I remembered Peyton.
You're good? Yeah, we can.
Today's. Are you good?
Yeah, we're good.
Today's first chapter: rumbling stomachs and other nightmares.
Nicholas slept outside all summer. He spent every day, as Aunt Carlotta told him to do, looking for food. From first light until nightfall, one day he saw the bear again. The bear stood upright. But Nicholas waited, stayed calm, be the forest. The bear stood there, peaceful and terrifying all at once. The bear that had chased his mother toward the well, but he couldn't hate this creature,
Look at me.
said Nicholas.
I'm skinny as a rake. No meat on my bones.
The bear seemed to agree and ambled away on all fours. Nicholas wondered if there was an unluckier boy in the world. And yes, there was. There was a boy called Gatu who lived in India and was struck by lightning 4 times while fishing in a stream. Very nasty, but it was a miserable, joyless time. Aunt Carlotta was never happy with the mushrooms and herbs he managed to find. The only real comfort apart from Micah was in counting down the days and weeks and months until his father returned, which he did by scratching lines in the nearest pine tree to the cottage. 2 months passed, then 3.
Where are you?
He asked, amid the trees. The only sound that came back to him was that of the wind or a distant woodpecker. Aunt Carlotta became nastier with the days, like vinegar getting more sour. She'd scream at him for nothing.
Stop that.
Shouted Aunt Carlotta one evening as she ate the soup he had made for her.
Or I'll feed you to a bear. Stop what? Those horrible noises from inside your disgusting body.
Nicholas was confused. The only way to stop a rumbling stomach was by eating, and, as on most days, he'd only found enough mushrooms for Aunt Carlotta to have soup, and the ones he'd sneaked in his mouth in the forest hadn't enough. But then Aunt Carlotta smiled. A smile on her face was an unusual thing to see, like a banana in the snow.
All right, you can have some soup. Oh, thank you, Aunt Carlotta. I'm so hungry, and I love mushroom soup.
Aunt Carlotta shook her head.
As you always make me soup, I thought I would repay the favor. So while you were out at the forest, I made some soup, especially for you. I would not eat that soup. Mm-mm.
Micah was looking through the window.
Don't eat it.
He squeaked pointlessly. Nicholas looked worried as he stared down at the murky gray-brown liquid.
What is it made with?
He asked.
Love,
Said Aunt Carlotta. Nicholas knew she had to be joking. Aunt Carlotta couldn't love any more than an icicle could love. That's a bit unfair to icicles, though. Icicles melt. Aunt Carlotta was as frozen thing was very frozen and would never melt.
go on then. Eat it.
It was the most disgusting thing he'd ever tasted. It was like eating mud and dirt and puddle water. But he could feel Aunt Carlotta watching him, so he kept eating. Aunt Carlotta's cold gray eyes made Nicholas feel 100 times smaller than he was as she said, for what seemed like the 100th time.
Your father is foolish.
Nicholas didn't answer her back. He just kept sipping the foul soup, feeling more and more sick. But Aunt Carlotta wasn't going to leave it there.
Everybody knows there are no such things as elves.
She said, spitting as she spoke.
Your father is a stupid, ignorant child to believe such things. I'd be very surprised if he's still alive at all. No one has ever been to the far north and returned to tell the tale. I was so stupid coming here, waiting for 500 rubles that will never arrive. Sweetheart, go turn in. You can always go home. Oh, no, I can't now. It's October. The weather has turned. I can't walk 10 miles in this weather. I'm here all winter now for Christmas. Not that Christmas means anything to me. It's a hateful time of year.
This was just too much,
Christmas is great.
Nicholas said.
I love Christmas and don't even care that it clashes with my birthday.
He was going to say,
The only thing that spoils Christmas is you.
but he thought better of it.
He
Aunt
didn't say that.
Carlotta seemed genuinely confused.
How can you, a grubby, dirty, motherless boy, love Christmas? If you were a rich merchant's son in Turku or Helsinki, then I would understand it. But my brother has always been so poor. He's been too poor to buy you a single present.
Nicholas felt a red flash of anger tingle his skin.
It was always magical, and I would rather a toy that was made with love than one that cost a lot of money. But the only thing he ever made you was the sleigh. He was always too busy working.
Nicholas thought of his old turnip doll and wondered where it was. It wasn't beside the door.
Uh-oh.
Where he had left it.
Your father is a liar. No.
Said Nicholas. He had finished the soup, but now felt extremely ill.
He promised you he'd come back. He told you that elves were real. 2 lies right there. Anyway, I'm tired now.
Said his aunt.
It's time for my bed. So now that you have finished your soup, if you can kindly get out of my sight, that would make me as happy as the Queen of Finland. This is my house now. I am your guardian. So I'll start doing exactly what I say. Exactly as I say it. Get out. Go.
Nicholas stood up, his stomach aching. He looked around the room.
Where's my turnip doll?
Oh my. Sorry, I just read ahead. Aunt Carlotta smiled. It was a proper smile and one that was soon turning into a laugh. And then she said it.
You just eaten him. What?
It took a second. No, 2 seconds. Maybe three. 3.5. Actually, no, just 3. But then Nicholas realized what she had just said. His only toy in the world was now in his stomach. He ran outside and threw up in the toilet.
Why did you do that?
He asked in disbelief from outside.
My mom made that for me. Well, she's no longer here, is she?
Said Aunt Carlotta through the small window which she had opened to get a better view of Nicholas being sick.
Thank goodness. Used to give me a headache listening to her bad singing all day. I just thought it was about time you should grow up and leave your silly toys behind.
Nicholas had finished. He went back inside. He thought of his mother. He thought of her holding on to the chain that held the bucket as she tried to escape the bear. That was the only option now, to run away. He could not stay here with Aunt Carlotta. He would prove his father wasn't a liar, and there was only one way to do it.
Goodbye, Aunt Carlotta.
He said, just a whisper under his breath, but he meant it. He was going. He was going to find his father. He was going to see the elves. He was going to make everything all right.
A very short chapter with a long title in which not very much happens. That's the name of our current chapter.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it is very short. Okay.
It is.
Aunt Carlotta mumbled something and didn't look back at him as she climbed into her bed with 2 mattresses. Nicholas took some of the stale bread lying on the table, stuffed it in his pocket, and went outside into the cold night. He was tired. His stomach still ached and his tongue tasted of rotten turnip, but he was also determined. Yes, he was going to start the walk to the far north. Micah was nibbling on a dry leaf. The mouse, he supposed, was the closest thing he had to a friend.
I'm going to the far north. It'll be a very long and dangerous journey. There's a very high chance of death. I think you should stay here, Micah. It'll be warmer. But if you want to come with me, give me a signal.
Micah looked anxiously at the door to the cottage.
You don't have to stay right here.
Nicholas told him.
You have the whole forest.
Micah glanced at the whole forest.
But there's no cheats in the forest.
Nicholas still could not speak mouse, but he got the gist.
So you want to come with me?
Micah perched on his hind legs, and though Nicholas couldn't entirely be sure, it seemed that the mouse nodded his little head. So he picked him up and put him in the left-hand coat pocket. Then, with Micah peeking out at the road ahead, Nicholas turned and headed north through the trees, toward the place he thought he might find his father and the elves, and tried his hardest to believe in both.
And there he goes. Dun, dun, dun. Out in the clear blue yonder. Oh, that was from Veterans Day. Air Force. That was the Air Force song. And today's final chapter. The old lady.
He walked all night and all of the next day. He looked out for the tall brown bear and saw paw prints in the ground. but not the creature itself. He walked to the edge of the pine forest and followed the path around the banks of Lake Blitzen. The lake was so big and the water so pure and still that it was a perfect mirror of the sky. He traveled for days and nights. He spotted moose, and yes, on 2 occasions he did see more bears, black bears. And once he had to climb a tree and wait an hour up in the branches for one of the bears to get bored and trudge away in the snow. He slept curled up around the roots of trees with Micah in his pocket or on the ground beside him. He lived on mushrooms and berries and fresh, cool water. He kept himself happy by singing Christmas tunes to himself, even though it was nowhere near Christmas. He imagined being rich and waking up on Christmas Day, having all the toys in the toy shop. Then he imagined something far better, getting his father a horse and a cart. But all the time, as he walked, it grew colder. Sometimes his feet hurt, sometimes he went hungry, but he was determined to keep going. He passed through the village called Shipsha Jarvie. I have no idea. That his father had told him about. It was just one street full of little wooden houses painted red. He walked along the street. An old toothless lady bent over a walking stick was coming along the road. In Nicholas's limited experience, every village always had to have one old toothless person walking around and saying scary things to strangers. So he was pleased that Scar Sip Jarvie was no exception.
Where where go you, mysterious boy, with the mouse in your pocket?
She said,
North.
is all they told her.
To look for cheese.
Added Micah, who still hadn't really got the point of the journey. The old woman was quite weird, but not weird enough to understand mouse language, or so she just looked at Nicholas and shook her head.
Not north.
She said, and her face as pale as a sheet. A pale sheet, obviously.
Go east
She said,
or south or west. Only a foolish person would go north. No one lives in Lapland. There's nothing there. Well, I must be a foolish person.
said Nicholas.
There's nothing wrong with being a foolish person.
Said a fool with little bells on his shoes who was passing by.
The thing is, I'm looking for my father. He's a woodcutter. He's called Joel. He wears a red hat. He has very tired eyes. He only has 9.5 fingers. He was with 6 other men, and they were on their way to the far north.
The old woman considered him, her face creased like a map, and speaking of map, she pulled out something crumpled from her pocket and handed it to him. It was a map.
There were some men. Yes, now that I think of it, 7 of them. They came through at the start of the summer. They had maps.
Nicholas felt a surge of excitement.
They dropped this one. Have they been back?
The old lady shook her head.
I tell you, those that go north, they never return. Well, thank you so much.
Said Nicholas. He tried to smile to hide his worry. He had to give her something, so he decided upon berries, as he didn't have much else.
Please have these berries.
The old lady smiled in return, and Nicholas saw that her gums were brown and rotten.
You are a good boy. Take my shawl. You'll need all the warmth you can get.
And Nicholas, who could feel that even Micah, though relatively warm inside his coat pocket, was beginning to shiver, took the gift and thanked her again and went on his way. On and on he walked, following the map over ice-covered plains and lakes and snow-covered fields and through forest full of spruce trees. One afternoon, Nicholas sat down underneath one of the snowy spruce trees and checked his feet. They were covered in blisters. The only bits of skin that weren't covered in blisters were bright red, and his shoes, which had been tatty to start with, had practically fallen to pieces.
It's no use,
he told Micah.
I don't think I can go on. I'm too tired. It's getting too cold. I'll have to go home.
But even as he said that word, home, he realized that he didn't have one. It was a cottage in the pine forest, but that wasn't home anymore. Not with Aunt Carlotta living there. Not when he wasn't even able to sleep in his own bed.
Listen, Micah,
he said, feeding the mouse a mushroom.
It might be best for you if you stayed in this forest. Look at the map. I don't know if we'll make it.
Nicholas and Micah peered at the map, but the path they had to follow was unclear. The map had no straight lines on it. It was just one long curving path, weaving through forest and around lakes towards a large mountain. He knew the mountain was large because it was called, on the map,
Very Large Mountain.
He lifted the mouse out of his pocket and placed him on the ground.
Go on, Micah. Leave me. Look, there are leaves and berries. You'll be able to live here. Go on.
The mouse looked up at him.
Leaves and berries? Don't insult me with talk of leaves and berries. Seriously, Micah, it's for the best.
But Micah just crawled back onto Nicholas's foot, and Nicholas put the mouse back in his pocket. Nicholas rested his head on the mossy ground and pulled the old lady's shawl over him, and right there in the daylight, he fell asleep. As he slept, snow fell. He had a dream about being a child and going to the hills near Lake Blitzen. His father pushed him on the sleigh as his mother laughed. He was so happy inside that dream. There was a scratchy feeling, and he sprang awake. Micah was pawing at his chest and squeaking with fear.
What is it, Micah? I don't have a clue.
Squeaked Micah.
But it's really big, and it has horns on its head.
Nicholas saw it. The creature. It was so close that for a moment he didn't know what it was. It certainly seemed large from where Nicholas was sitting, but it wasn't a bear. It was covered in dark gray fur and had a broad, strong-looking head, like a moose, but definitely not one. The creature's chest was heaving with deep breaths and wasn't gray, but as white as the snow. The animal was making strange noises as if it was a pig crossed with a wolf. Nicholas saw the large velvet-haired antlers that bent and twisted like trees leaning in the wind. Then he realized it was a reindeer, a very big and very angry reindeer, and it was staring straight at Nicholas.
And tomorrow's first chapter is, of course, the reindeer. See you in a little while.
Yes.
Adios.
See you in just a little bit.